So I'll begin by going through some research on why outreach is important and why we encourage our members to get involved. I'll be providing some background and an overview of the resource, My Skills, My Life. We'll have a look at the Girls Online platform, and I'll also go through the online training platform and show you how WISE can provide support, especially through this unprecedented period. Next slide, please. So let's start with outreach, why it's important and why we encourage our members to get involved. Research shows that girls' default mode of thinking is STEM equals male, and this is evident when children are asked to draw a scientist. Over half of girls draw a man. Interestingly, children are more likely to draw women than in the past, but the older the girls get, stereotypes kick in and then they start drawing men. This doesn't mean girls just are not interested in STEM. A recent survey found that scientist was girls' fifth most popular dream job. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to show you this slide as it's quite an interesting one and shows you what young people are thinking today. Although positive to see scientists in the top 10 for girls, we need to consistently tackle the stereotypes that remain in modern society. Next slide, please. Girls are put off because they think STEM is too difficult or more for the boys. In this particular research, over 3/4 of the girls said they felt there was a lack of high-profile role models in the science and technology sector, something researchers believe is contributing to young women's negative perceptions of the industry. Recently, Microsoft surveyed 11,500 young women ranging in age from 11 to 30 from 12 European countries and found young girls' interests in these critical skills and subjects peaked at the age of 11, but that interest significantly dwindles by the time they turn 15, which is a crucial time in education when they're choosing subjects for post-16 study, for example. So with outreach, we can show girls that people like them can have a happy and successful career in STEM. If they can see it, they can be it, and we can show them that in STEM, they will make a difference to the world around them. This means we can keep their interest up and encourage them to continue STEM studies. Next slide, please. We have a big STEM skills shortage, and it's costing employers £1.5 billion per year. 7 in 10 STEM employers have found it difficult to hire staff with the required skills in the last year. Almost half of STEM businesses are looking abroad to find the right skills, and the majority believe that Brexit will worsen the situation. One of the reasons for this is the leaky pipeline we have when it comes to girls in STEM. For example, just 1 in 5 physics A-level students is female, and 26% of core STEM graduates are female. In GCSE computing, there's a bigger gender gap, just 1/5 of entrants are female. And this is a problem because of the huge number of tech jobs expected to be created, 175,000 by the mid-2020s. If we don't get girls turned onto STEM, they will miss out on these opportunities. Next slide, please. The important thing to remember is that there's a mutual benefit. Research found that companies benefit from better communication skills in their STEM professionals, while young people are more enthused about STEM. In our experience, and working with employees who have taken part in delivering sessions or as role models in sessions, they have felt energized about the work that they do. Ultimately, better gender diversity is good for business. So building a pipeline of girls who want to come and work for you makes business sense. Employer contact helps young people to understand what's needed in the workplace. One study found that young people who had employer contact were 5 times less likely to become NEET, and that's not in education, employment or training. Outreach also helps young people to better understand how STEM skills are used in work, and this is even more important in the case of girls. For example, research found that girls are far more likely than boys to want to see physics being applied in context. Next slide, please. The Engineering Brand Monitor is an annual survey carried out by Engineering UK. This annual survey reveals young people's, teachers and parents' attitudes to engineering. This year's results provide cause for optimism, with a proportion of 16 to 19-year-olds who would consider a career in engineering increasing significantly since 2016. Additionally, the majority of teachers and parents, key influencers in young people's decision-making, held positive views of engineering, and 80% of STEM secondary teachers and 68% of parents believed a career in engineering would be desirable for their pupils or children. The survey of more than 2,500 young people, 1,000 STEM secondary school teachers and 1,800 members of the public also shows compelling evidence that STEM outreach can and does work. Young people attending a STEM careers activity in the previous 12 months were over 3 times as likely to consider a career in engineering than those who had not. Next slide, please. However, work is still needed to improve young people's knowledge, perceptions, and understanding of engineering, particularly among girls. There are clear gender differences across the board, with girls being less likely than boys to know about engineering, to view it positively, to consider a career in the industry, or know what to do it next in order to become an engineer. They are also less likely to believe they could become an engineer if they wanted to. The survey also reveals issues with how engineering is perceived. For example, engineering lagged behind other STEM subjects with respect to young people's knowledge of what those working in the industry do and the extent to which they perceive engineering positively and believe it to be a desirable career. Young people who attend STEM outreach events are more likely to know what engineers do, but only a quarter of those surveyed had been to such an event. Next slide, please. Dr. Hilary Levers, Chief Executive of Engineering UK's comments show how important it is to show the real-life context of these jobs. Salary also ranks as an important factor for young people when choosing a career. Compelling and accurate salary and labour market information should be a key part of careers advice and guidance. Young people who participate in STEM engagement activities know more about engineering, and those that know more about engineering are more likely to consider a career in it. Given the urgent need we have to encourage more and more diverse young people in engineering, we must work together to make sure that every young person has repeated opportunities to be inspired by STEM and engineering. Next slide, please. So now I want to go on to our resource that we've created at WISE and just give you a little bit of an understanding of what that is and what it includes. And we've created this resource for companies and organisations to use within their outreach programmes. My Skills, My Life was developed in consultation with over 1,000 girls in 25 schools across the UK. We've created this resource so it's interactive, fun and quick, and the aim is for the new resource to be used as a tool or a hook to start the conversation about the opportunities in STEM. It can be used as a standalone activity, it can be incorporated into existing programmes, or as an activity to start dialogue with schools. The My Skills, My Life journey starts with girls setting up and verifying their account, and this takes a couple of minutes to do. Currently, due to GDPR rules around collecting data from young people, only those aged 13 or above can set up an account to use the site. Creating an account allows us to keep track of use, and whilst developing the resource, the girls were interested in having the opportunity to revisit the site again to look at the different opportunities available at various times during the educational journey before choosing options for GCSE or post-GCSE and beyond. There's a couple of slides coming up now which will give you a little bit of an insight into the resource. So we go on to the next slide, please. Once they've created their account, they're led to an introductory activity showing them that everyone is unique and their preferred way of working adds to a diverse and creative workforce, which is what we want and need. After the introductory activity, they create an emoji, and this helps to personalise the process. And rather than randomly completing the quiz, the girls are more invested, and this helps to personalise their experience. Next slide, please. Once they've created an emoji, they are led to 15 simple questions. They have 3 options to select from, and this helps to narrow down their personality type. Next slide, please. Once they've completed the quiz, they're shown 3 personality types that they match closest to. They have an opportunity to explore these further. 99% of the time, the girls find that it matches them perfectly. Occasionally, I may get someone saying it doesn't match them. However, they are then encouraged to explore the other types and see which ones best describe them. There's 12 personality types on there. They usually manage to find 1 or 2 that suit. The activity isn't about pigeonholing anyone. The idea is to introduce them to the vast number of opportunities in STEM. Next slide, please. They are then encouraged to look at the role model case studies that link to their personality types. The role models have also completed the quiz. They can now see role models and job roles that they have probably never seen or heard of. And this is sometimes the first time the girls have come across these jobs. And it's so important that young people hear about all the different jobs as early as possible to ensure they make a more informed choice about their futures. One of the first questions I ask when I go into schools is, what jobs have you heard of? What jobs are you thinking about doing? And I always get the standard answers of hairdresser, nail technician, and all of those people that they've seen. So all of these jobs that we've got on our site are all jobs that they are, software developers, and all of these jobs that they probably never have seen or heard of. So it's a really great opportunity to introduce even these words to young people. Next slide, please. The girls can search by job role, role model, personality type, and company. So we have a search box there, and in there we're even expanding that to include region, so people can put in their particular areas and find role models that are local to them. Next slide, please. We're adding company profiles on there so girls get an understanding of what companies do, and all the role models connected to that company are linked. We've asked companies to simplify the information, and we're also recording regions so that girls, teachers and parents will be able to see all the companies and role models local to them. Next slide, please. On the company profiles, companies can add useful links on there, as well as pictures showing what happens inside the companies, which can sometimes be a bit of a mystery. Next slide, please. The company profile page also has all the role models from that company displayed. Next slide, please. The company logo appears next to each role model to show where they work. Feedback from teachers is that they don't know enough information about STEM careers to advise pupils. A site like this where girls can explore careers in STEM and sessions where girls get to meet real-life role models is very valuable. We have so many requests from schools and teachers for STEM ambassadors to come in and talk to their pupils about the work that they do. Running a My Skills, My Life session is ideal and ensures that girls get more from this encounter than just a talk. You can do a girls-only session or have an evening session with mothers and daughters and role models. Next slide, please. STEM ambassadors can create their own profile by logging onto the site and completing a series of questions. We will then approve the case study and make it live on the site. Girls all over the UK will be able to view your profile, and you never know, your story may be the one that inspires them. Anyone working in STEM can be a role model. All we ask is that they're between 18 to 30 years old. This will ensure that girls can see these role models as achievable and closer to where they are now. Employees from organisations who have been involved in running or taking part in sessions as role models have loved it and are always eager to do more. Next slide, please. We've also created a paper version of the resource, and all the instructions on how to use this can be found on the online training platform. The resource is designed to be as flexible as possible, and we've delivered sessions via webinar, and we have instructions included on our website. And you'll agree, having a webinar session with role models possibly, or even a session where you contact schools and do a session like that via webinar in this current climate would be absolutely perfect and would continue to have that connection with schools and young people. Next slide, please. We've created some online training to accompany the resource, and this has been created so that all deliverers understand the background and gain maximum benefit when running sessions in schools and at events. The training includes a module on unconscious bias and how that affects young people, and it also shows trainees how to deliver the resource. The aim is for anyone who takes part in the training to be confident in delivering a session to girls. Next slide, please. Once a company purchases the training package, 30 online logins will be provided. A team leader can be appointed who can track engagement on the platform and see who has completed the training. The training platform includes 40 supporting resources, and these include PowerPoint presentations, branding guidelines so you can create your own collateral for events, safeguarding information, and letters for schools. A company account also includes a 1-hour webinar to discuss specific requirements with the WISE outreach team to ensure you get the most out of the programme. We can also log any events and the number of girls reached, etc. This allows us and you to track how effective your engagement is. Ultimately, we want you to help us reach 200,000 girls. The training is also available as a face-to-face option if that would be more suitable, and this is a 3-hour training. Next slide, please. I also wanted to make you aware of some of the other projects that we have been involved in with My Skills, My Life. We're currently working with Raspberry Pi, Apps for Good, Behavioural Insight Team, and STEM on a project for the Department for Education. Various initiatives, including My Skills, My Life, will be trialled across primary and secondary schools across the UK, across England. We'll be working in primary schools, Year 5. The consortium has identified some of the possible reasons why a large percentage of girls don't choose computing, and this includes feeling like they don't belong and that computing is not relevant to them. We would like to recruit 300 female role models working within the technology computing sectors to register as role models and get involved with sessions across the country between September 2020 and December 2020, all being well. You can get involved by leading a My Skills, My Life session, supporting a My Skills, My Life session as a role model, or completing a My Skills, My Life profile for the online platform. We've also produced specific resources for the property and maritime sector, for the Department for Transport and Northumbria University's Bridge Project. If you're interested in having a bespoke version for your organisation or sector, then get in touch. The UK is the only country in the world aiming for net zero emissions by 2050. We know that girls care passionately about the environment, and results from the Girls' Attitude Survey conducted by Girl Guiding in 2019 shows that 88% of girls aged 7 to 21 felt it was urgent that we all do more to protect the environment. However, the reality is that many young adults aren't aware of the link between STEM and a sustainable future. And as business skills requirements continuously evolve, we need girls to be inspired and better understand their options to attract them to careers that will make a positive impact on the environment. And that's why WISE's My Skills, My Life will have a dedicated environmental section on the site. Next slide, please. This is how we want you to get involved. Undertake the training, face-to-face or online, share the resource and use it at events and etc. Deliver a session for us and please let us know when you do. Become a role model. We have over 600 role models on there and it takes 20 minutes and you never know, your story may be the one that inspires. You can add a company profile to the site and this is free for all members who are core and above. Next slide, please. And that brings me to the end of my presentation and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. So if you want to enter any of the questions, you can do so on the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Just go through those. So I've had a question, can males run My Skills, My Life sessions? We actively encourage men to get involved as well. I've had sessions where I've had female role models that were not as inspiring as I would have liked. And I've had males run sessions and they've been absolutely fantastic. It's all about the passion that you have and that's the most important thing. We have some case studies on the training platform as well, which will show you how different companies have incorporated My Skills, My Life into their outreach programs. We do have, the question was, are there any examples of lesson plans to follow when delivering the sessions? Yes, we do have clear lesson plans in the learning catalogue in the training platform, which you can use as examples of how to deliver sessions. And there's clear step-by-step instructions available as well. We're also available, so if you send an email to info@, we'll definitely support you with any sessions that you're planning to do. Core membership is something that's all the details of how much the core membership is on the website as well. Yes, we have been. There's a question about Engineering UK and potential links to the NEON, the new Tomorrow's Engineers platform. We are in discussions with Tomorrow's Engineers as well. So we're working together with them on one of our projects, which is the STEM Accord project that we're running in Bristol. It's a pilot that we're delivering in Bristol, and we're working quite closely with them on that. The cost of having a profile on the site, if you don't have membership with WISE, is £1,000. And that's just to help us maintain the platform and make sure that it's free for girls. Okay, I think that'll brings me to the end of my session. If we can just go to the final slide. How can you aspire to be something you don't know exists? I think it's really important that everyone takes the opportunity to show the next generation about all the different opportunities that there are. So now I'll hand over to Lydia Fairman from Network Rail. If you want to continue asking questions, I can answer those at the end of when the speakers have finished. So I'll hand over to Lydia Fairman from Network Rail. Can you unmute yourself, Lydia?
Hi, I'm here, Shagufta. Hi, everybody. It's great to be talking to you. I am talking to you from the STEM Learning Centre, which is an incredible place to be, but there aren't very many of us here. So safely sitting on a table away from anybody else. So lovely to be talking to you all today. I'm a capability and development manager for Network Rail. So my job is primarily to set our strategy around skills development in the longer term, to try to forecast what our skills gaps and skills needs are going to be. Obviously, as a company, we're a very big company. So before I set the scene in terms of our situation, in terms of skills, Network Rail is the company within the rail sector that runs the tracks and the train infrastructure. So we're responsible for ensuring that the tracks are available and safe and repaired and maintained so that trains can run freely. So that means we have a very complicated and convoluted system to run. And as we'll all be aware, it can come to a stop. So things like systems thinking, systems engineering are going to be vital for us in the future. Can I have the next slide, please? So why is early engagement so important at Network Rail? Well, as a railway, we're really obviously visible, but as an employer, we're probably less so. So the problem that we tend to find is that people have built up a perception of Network Rail based on the jobs that they can see. And those are the jobs which make up the majority of our workforce, but they're also not the jobs that are the hardest to fill. So we have about 30,000 people working out on the tracks and track workers that we employ. Actually, across the industry, there's probably more like 250,000. We also have about 10,000 people who are based in the back offices. So a mixture of roles like HR and communications and finance, but those really specialist hidden roles in engineering, telecommunications, data, and all sorts of things that I wouldn't even be able to bring to mind. So our challenge is skills. We've got scarce skills. We're impacted by the forecast skills shortages that we're all impacted by, but we've also got skills and skills needs over the next 10 to 15 years that we've never seen before in rail. So that added competition factor is difficult for us. The future world of work for us, again, is the same as many other companies. We're facing the rapid changes in the ways of working and the technologies that we're going to need. We've got the added bonus of a Victorian infrastructure, so it's very difficult for us to be able to make the changes at the speed we need to. So that agility and innovation and the skills that we can create there are so important for us in the railway. Next slide, please. So in 2017, the Routes into Rail Board, which is a group of industry partners, some from outside the industry too, commissioned some research from an external agency. We went out to 14 to 22-year-olds to understand how they see rail, or how they don't see rail, as the case may be. So they outlined the kind of action that we should be able to take to be able to develop and increase and diversify our workforce. Obviously, again, we have the same problems as other industries in diversity. Currently, the gender diversity in Network Rail is about 18% female, and we're obviously looking to increase that. We know the benefits that would bring. So our aims from that campaign were to raise awareness and engagement around a career in rail, especially among the people in those currently underrepresented groups and specific skill sets. Next slide, please. So what are our problems in rail? Well, I've covered them briefly. We've got an ageing workforce. We're on a cliff edge in terms of some of our communities, our signalling community, our telecommunications community, where the majority of the workforce are in their late 50s, and we could lose a really high percentage, in some areas 40% over the next 15 years. So we are in a situation where we've got to act now, and actually skills planning and those legacy systems that we have to keep running, we've got to solve those problems. We've also got the problem with gender diversity, as I've mentioned, and we have this problem with perception. So we talk about you can't be what you can't see, and those hidden roles in rail are ever more important that we promote. So our STEM and outreach activities are really about promoting the roles that we can't see, less than promoting the roles that we can. So you'll see that we use some of the activities that are obviously rail to draw people in and get some kind of interest and excitement, but then we try to go into the detail of the slightly less understood roles. We've also got a really good range of jobs in rail which are in the environmental sector. And for me, within our skills strategy, those are really key to bring in those areas that might not have been interested in rail before, and also to increase our gender diversity, because those are the roles where we can really obviously communicate a purpose and get people to respond to that. Next slide, please. So this is just a little bit of data about our future workforce. Rail is funded by the government, and we're funded in control periods within these cycles, similar to other sectors like energy or water. So we're able as an industry to be able to plan quite far ahead. So we're trying to align all of our skills and our outreach activities with those future plans so that we can, in the long run, become more tactical with those kind of strategic projects and really target the activities geographically and in terms of the skills that we'll need. So this slide just gives you an idea of the kind of volumes of roles that we're looking at and those people who we think might retire over the next few years. The National Skills Academy for Rail are fantastic for us in terms of providing us with industry data and looking at things like the World Economic Forum and Offices of National Statistics, pulling through all the data so that we can be on top of how we might be impacted by other industries too. Next slide, please. So this is a bit more about those unusual roles to rail or new roles to rail, so but similar roles to everybody else. So robotics, artificial intelligence, systems thinking, data, all of these kind of skills are going to be absolutely vital for us to be able to develop and run the railway in the future. We want systems engineers to come in and see how far we can push the existing technology, and we want to be able to plan journeys from end to end for our passengers. The rail industry motto is putting passengers first. That's our company strategy, and the skills that we're bringing in really are focused on how we can bring those things together, how we can keep, you'll be hearing in the news at the moment, freight is one of the popular topics of conversation. And we need to be able to keep those freight lines open and moving because their turnarounds are so quick. So we've got some complex challenges within industry. For me, they're a massive sales point in terms of our early engagement and our outreach, because we can give young people challenges to try to solve. And we never cease to be amazed by the responses we get from children when they're coming up with innovative ideas to some of the challenges that we tell them about. Next slide, please. So what are we doing? We're working together as an industry, and obviously we're doing a lot as a company. So I wanted to mention some of the industry collaboration, because the potential for us as an industry to be able to reach more children and show more variety and opportunity is mammoth. We've got, as I said, we've got probably 245,000 workers across the whole railway, possibly more. And we've got a variety of roles, shift patterns, working environments. So as an industry, we can offer anything that somebody might want in terms of career prospects in rail. We've got great salaries. Certainly within Network Rail, we're in a privileged position that we can talk openly about the salaries that people will earn because we've got transparent pay. So it makes those conversations when we're running our outreach really, really easy and beneficial because we can just talk about that. So we are building our leadership and management capabilities, because to be able to run the digital data systems that we need to run, we know we need to be better at that. Our Connected Leaders programme will be launched hopefully soon, COVID-19 depending. We've signed up to an industry promotion and attraction campaign where a number of the large and small employers have invested to build a careers portal which children will be able to interact with, which also has curriculum linked materials. So we're in the process of building that at the moment. We've all signed up to run a shared data apprenticeship so that we can get young people moving around the industry and their learning and experience, so that we hope in the future we can enable more mobility as people need to move around the industry in those roles. And we're working together in the East Midlands as part of our sector deal to coordinate our schools activity with other employers in the area. We also collaborate annually on the Big Bang. This would have been our 3rd year of collaboration, so sadly we're not there this year. We weren't there last week, but we would have had a rail zone this year. We had all of our train operating and freight operating companies signed up. So the fact that we got to that point has been massive progress for us, and is really going to be very exciting in future years. We've been supporting the Year of Engineering campaign, and then the Take a Closer Look campaign that has come out of that in the last year. And we work together on our routes into Rail Board. Next slide, please. As a business, we've got an early engagement programme that's varied, and that really reflects the different needs that we have as a company. So I work in one of our functional areas where we're responsible for the engineering technical excellence around the company, but also our digital railway. So we are providing programmes that the whole company nationwide can participate in, that operate in a variety of ways because we've got so many different personalities. So if people want to participate virtually as role models, they can do that. If they're more comfortable going into schools, they can do that. And there are also much smaller activities. So our aim with our programme is to showcase those hidden roles I've talked about and change the perception of what rail really means. To create opportunities for meaningful role model interactions. So we're not just having casual touch points, we want really good interactions and repeated interactions between our role models and young people. We want to provide an early engagement infrastructure that our national business can access. That sounds easier than it possibly is. So we have lots of touch points in the business steering groups. We've got flexible ways of providing funding so that we can really try to kickstart projects in what are devolved businesses around the country. We've got regions and routes that are businesses in their own right. So we have a small funding pot that they can bid to create activities in the hope that they can then get the evidence that they need to be able to go to their own directors and create their own early engagement activities in future. And then a big aim for us is upskilling our employees to be able to deliver quality outreach activities. It's a really good engagement tool, as well as being able to participate in the early engagement and STEM activities. Employees enjoy it, and it gives them some really good skills that they can then use in their day-to-day roles. So some of those programmes I've mentioned, but we're heavy supporters of WISE. We've been working with WISE for years. We are a strategic partner, so as well as the early engagement activities, we participate in research, and we are really pushing our role models to be more visible on the site. We also work with Engineering UK. We've just signed up to do the IET Faraday Challenge, possibly going to be delayed, but we hope that will happen in the next year. And we work with STEM learning very closely. Next slide, please. So a couple of weeks ago, we were really proud, I think it must have been the middle of February, to open our STEM lab, which you can see in the back of this photograph, which has been designed as a dedicated space because of the fight for meeting rooms. It's an innovative space, so it's all very light and bright. It's got tables which will move so that we can really, it's as accessible as it can possibly be. And we can change it for anybody that might have sensory needs and run our activities in there. So we can bring up to 25 school children in for a workshop there, and we can also train our staff to deliver the STEM activities. So we were in the early stages of this, and we were hoping to have a programme which we were going to roll out from now. So we should be upskilling our staff as we speak. Sadly, the STEM lab sits idle just at the moment, but we hope later in the year that we'll be able to really kick that off. So at the moment, we're in planning for what we'll be able to do, and we'll be developing that space. So our aim is that the rest of the business that have space in training centres and in offices will open their own dedicated STEM labs around the company. Next slide, please. So I thought I'd talk really briefly about how we measure our success, because being able to provide evidence of success is really important. And I'm quite pragmatic about this in terms of our ability to be able to track the success in terms of numbers. So we're reliant on external parties to tell us how we're doing, and Engineering UK and Wise are brilliant to tell us how we're doing in terms of education. But for us, that measurement of success is really about being able to show our leaders the impact that our events have. So we do that with questionnaires at the beginning and at the end of our events, and we're collating key data to be able to understand who we're reaching, but also how they felt before they met us and how they felt after they met us. And what we tend to learn from that is that people who say they knew nothing finish a STEM session saying that they want to know more. And ultimately, if they've come back to us and they said they want to know more, we know that we've been successful. So when I'm presenting STEM activities, or I'm seeking funding in the business for more STEM activities, that's the impact that I try to present to my leaders. I know now that they want to see more data in terms of strategic workforce and planning. So that's where our area of focus is at the moment. And that really is about us eking out our business plans as we finish our reorganisation later this year, to be able to target those STEM activities really specifically and align them with what the business needs in the future. And that will get us the continued investment that we need. But we're very lucky as an organisation that there is recognition that our support to STEM is absolutely vital to the success of the railway in the future. So we are continuing, we hope, to do good stuff in the long term. So we do that by the feedback in the sessions. We also use online and web links and things like that. We have volunteer leave. Our employees get 5 volunteer days a year, and they're allowed to use those for STEM activities, among other things. And we're trying to work with our social value teams, which I know other organisations do very well, to be able to collate this work in with social value, community and safety engagement too. Next slide, please. So what's next? Well, everything's slightly up in the air at the moment, but we hope in July, we've pushed the date forward in the hope that by July we'll be able to meet. We'll have our second STEM conference. That's when we bring as many of our STEM ambassadors together as we can. Although we have so many in the business, we've got over 400, we can't bring them all together. So we bring them together for ideas, case study sharing, resources and talks, and we design some more activities. We're looking to develop and promote the STEM lab to encourage the business to build more of those nationally. We will be doing scenario planning heavily at the moment, and that's primarily what this week has been in terms of our early engagement activities, to see what we can do throughout this strange period of time we find ourselves in. So our immediate ideas are that we're collating all of our resources that are downloadable and shareable, and over the next 6 to 8 weeks, our central company Twitter accounts and Instagram accounts will be feeding those through for children and parents to be able to download resources that they can use at home. We're looking at webinars and streaming to see if we can set up some virtual workshops. We're designing rail challenges, so we're going to look at what challenges we can feed through social media for children to send us in pictures. We're trying to make those as unintrusive as possible so that they don't have to interrupt their parents who are probably working at home, hopefully working at home. So we're trying to design Lego activities or get them to do something with the recycling and build something, just things that will get them thinking. And we've been able to extend our participation in the Primary Engineer Leaders Award, which I think is going to be really useful. So the interviews that should have been finishing this week are going to continue for the next 3 months. So hopefully we'll get some really good competition entries coming in. So that means we're going to get those meaningful interactions continuing over the next 3 months as a minimum. We'll continue our steering groups. I hope we'll press forward with the DFE Code of Practice. And we are just going to keep being creative and try to keep the momentum up. So next slide, please. I think we're over to questions, which I'll hand to Shagufta to let me know if there are any.
Thank you very much, Lydia. That was an absolutely fantastic presentation and really great insight into the outreach that you're doing. I've had one question, which is you have sites throughout the UK, so you work throughout the UK. So how do you engage with people locally in those areas? How do you get involved in your programs? So
we're liaising with the STEM hubs. They're very good for us to be able to liaise locally. Neon, I think, is going to be really useful for that. We are trying to keep lists of all the schools that we have existing partnerships with. And we rely on the goodwill of our employees to help us with that as well. So we're trying to keep lists centrally as far as we can. We coordinate a lot with our STEM ambassadors. So actually when an activity comes in, we go out to our STEM network within the company, which is quite large, and just people that we know to be early engagement leads. And out of that, we tend to get the connections with schools that we need. We also work with the university technical colleges, and we're trying to build strong relationships with them. We use SpringPod, which is a really good way of being able to communicate with universities and schools too. And actually the industry portal that we're building is going to be another mechanism for us to be able to do that. So Neon, SpringPod and STEM networks really.
Fantastic. The question I had was, how important has being a member of WISE been in attempting to address the skills gap, improve gender balance and change the perception of girls to consider a career in STEM in Network Rail?
That has been hugely important for us. So I've only been in the company for 3 years and 2 years in this role. And when I joined within the engineering function, it was clear that our relationship with WISE had been pivotal in some pieces of research that have been delivered. So People Like Me, which was the quiz to precede My Skills, My Life, was developed in conjunction with us as a piece of research. And that really helped us to get the momentum with our employees, understanding how important role models were. We also did the menopause project at that time, which has helped to inform the CIPD guidance that came out on managing menopause. So in terms of gender diversity, of course, it's not just getting more women to come and work for us. We want them to come and stay. And in Network Rail, some of our challenges in terms of that female workforce are just practical. So there are areas of the workforce where you'll find 17 women to 5,000 men, and the facilities literally did not exist. So we've had to do a lot of research into what we can do to improve that, and WISE have been vital for us to be able to do that. So we've got welfare packs, we've now got mobile loos, we've got all sorts of things to help women with managing periods when they're on the railway. And those kind of things that we'll talk about very openly and proudly mean that when young girls and women are now considering us as an employer, they can see that that support really is there. And then just for our engagement and early engagement with the younger audiences, we use My Skills, My Life at the Big Bang. We run it on iPads now. We used to do the paper copy, which actually went down really well too. And we run these workshops. It means we've always got a tool with a structure, we've got e-learning that our employees can take with them and roll out with very little difficulty. So as a big company, it's been fantastic for us.
Brilliant. Another question is it the Department of Education code a 12-hour activity, and how do we engage with the Department for Education?
No, so the Department for Education it's a code of practice is what I was referring to there, where a number of companies across all industries have come together as a round table to agree what we should be doing to try to work together more, so that we're not really bombarding schools, not bombarding the same schools with requests for STEM interaction, and we are giving a fair opportunity to the schools that possibly don't hear from employers. So it's trying to encourage more collaboration across all industries and sharing more activities. So the Neon app that's coming out via Engineering UK is building on that. So my plea in terms of that would be work with other employers. Think less about your brand when you're delivering early engagement activities, and think more about the fact, I always think about this in a three-pronged thing, which is we want to get children into STEM, then we want to get children into rail. So that's what our early engagement activity is. Once we've got them into STEM, we get them into rail, and then our resourcing teams are responsible for getting them into our company. So I'm not so worried about the brand when I'm running these activities. I'm really happy to collaborate with other organisations and have those role models at events, because I think it makes it more exciting and engaging for children, and that's ultimately what the aim is for me.
Absolutely, fantastic. Another question, can you give any insights on activities that haven't worked well with school students and maybe what you've done to improve those?
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, we always do learn what doesn't work. Oh gosh, I'm thinking. It was interesting. I would say it was interesting at the Big Bang when we moved from the paper version of the quiz to the iPad version of the quiz, because when we had the paper, they were on the floor doing those quizzes, and it was great fun. And we've got brilliant pictures of them everywhere, kind of jumping for joy. And I think in that environment, actually taking them off the app and getting them on the paper version can work more effectively. So we get them to do it online, but actually we have the paper copies there as well when we're running My Skills, My Life in workshops, because we find the conversations better when they've got a pen and a piece of paper. I don't know what it does, but it takes them away from that device, I think, and gets them in the room. So that would probably be my best piece of advice. We recently developed we run an activity called Ozo Bots. They're brilliant. You can get them on Amazon. I couldn't recommend them highly enough. And they follow a black line. So for us, we can get them signaling and coding. And we developed a mat for those. And we discovered that because the new generations come out, they need different pens. So that kind of thing has been a learning for us. Check your kit before you're just about to go and deliver to 80,000 kids, because we had to get sudden kind of fixes with stickers to make it work. Sadly, we didn't even go, but yeah, just be prepared. Try all of your activities before you deliver them would be my best piece of advice.
Definitely, and I think some of the activities that we've run, we've sometimes adapted after every session. We've learned something from every event that we've been to. So I think when you go out there, that's when you kind of realize where you've got the issues and which bit works and which bit doesn't work. So it's about going out there and trialing it, really, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and the last thing I'd say on that would be people are very specific to say get the right people talking to young people, and I'm in two minds on that, because the right people for one person is a different person for every person they'll meet. So you might want your kind of show floor people that give a gleaming presentation to go out and do stuff, but actually you need the people that will have a really detailed conversation one-to-one there. You need the people that will be glamorous and funny and engage an audience. You need a real mixture of people when you're going out there and speaking to young people, because there'll be one child in the room that finds it quite difficult to have a conversation that will gel really well with your engineer that you might not perceive to be the person that gives a glittering presentation at the front. So I think a mix of people when you're delivering stuff is actually more important than who you might feel are your typical presenters, I guess.
Well, that brings us to the end of that presentation. Please do continue to send in any questions that you might have. So thank you very much, Lydia. That was really useful. And so please stay until the end so we can ask any questions that might come through as well. I'll now introduce you to our next speaker, Andy Baker. So over to you now, Andy.
Thank you very much indeed. Firstly, a big thank you to Wise for their kind invite to come along and speak to you guys today, and welcome to you all. Just to give you an idea of what I'd like to present today, is really to talk about some of the considerations and challenges that we've had as a business in relation to our recruitment and outreach, in particular early careers, which I'll come on to a little bit more. But first and foremost, I'm the HR manager for MBDA. My role and my team's role is we recruit early careers young students. We are recruiting about 250, 260 young people every year, and that's a mixture of apprentices, graduates, undergraduates, and summer placements. And that has increased significantly probably in the last 3 years. In fact, just did some recent stats, and it's increased by about 120% in the last 2 years, which is quite an increase, as you can appreciate. Next slide, please. So who are MBDA? First and foremost, we are the world's leading defence company supporting the armed forces. We are the biggest European company in our sector, and we employ about 10,000 people worldwide, of which 3,500 of those are based in the UK. We've been around since the 50s in various shapes and sizes and guises. Previously British Aerospace and Matcha BAE Dynamics, but we say MBDA as a brand, as a individual company, we've been around for about 19 or so years. Essentially, we report into three major shareholders, which are BAE Systems, which is primarily UK, Airbus, primarily French, and Leonardo, which is primarily the Italian part of our business. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges that we've had, or we remain to have going forward, historically we have all the recruitment team have been responsible for all of outreach. You can appreciate for those that are heavily involved in outreach, it's quite a challenge to not only maintain the activities that we support, but also come up with new ideas. And as a business, we are continuously looking at how we can move things forward, what's the impact, how relevant that impact is across our many local schools to us. But one of the decisions we had to make, because the outreach piece essentially sat under recruitment, we took the decision to separate outreach away from recruitment, which I'll hopefully talk about in a bit more detail as we move forward. But the business historically made many assumptions that everything we did with regards to outreach kind of had a natural link, it was a natural feeder into our early careers programs. And although that inspiration piece is clearly important, again, I'll come on to that, we felt that maybe the motivations and the recruitment team, what was their primary aim? What was we there to do? Which was primarily recruit students into the business, and how we approach that big task was very different to what we should be applying to our outreach programs. Again, I hope that becomes a little bit clear as we move forward. So we essentially, as we all do, I'm sure, on this call, we understand outreach does inspire. It's there to inspire the next generation as far as we're concerned. 85% of MBDA is primarily engineering or technology based. So that's really important to us. But we felt that outreach historically, before I joined, there was an assumption that firstly, that outreach led into recruitment, as we've talked about, but also we found that it was very difficult to track candidates. So we engaged as early as primary school age children, and of course, tracking those students through their learning, if you like, for many years to come, and even into early years in senior age school kids as well, it's difficult to track those candidates and those students. And also we felt that trying to track those students did restrict us quite a bit in regards to reaching a sort of wider talent pool as well. And again, going back to what I said, we had different motivators, different drivers for how we applied our logic and reasoning to outreach compared to how we apply our logic and reasoning to recruitment. So essentially we split anything from year 10 downwards. We put, and still do, we continue to put an awful lot of effort into the inspiring next generation and bringing to life the opportunities that engineering can bring to both boys and girls, of course. And then the recruitment piece was more aimed at showing or allowing us to showcase MBDA as being the employer of choice for those in year 11 or older. So again, those college students and school year 11, 12, and 13, and also university students as well. It just allows us to be a little bit more conscious, if you like, about how we recruit and who our recruitment targets are, but also to then create those dedicated campaigns, which is essential for us, for people to understand who we are, what our culture is, what we offer moving forward. And again, I felt when I first joined this role about 4 years ago, we didn't do that particularly well because we was all-encompassing recruitment function that was there to kind of inspire as well, which didn't work particularly well in my mind. Next slide, please. So how do we do that with regards to the structures? So essentially all of what you can see in those bullet points are what we were responsible for, but are going forward as well. So we've essentially separated that team, or my team, into, there's an attraction piece, which kind of feeds into the talent pipeline. There's a dedicated recruitment team, which essentially are for those guys that are looking for the application in to onboarding, which you can see further down the slide. And of course, then that STEM and business outreach, which is still very crucial to us, not only for that trying to inspire, but also from a corporate social responsibility perspective. And there are some ongoing conversations and debates around, who is responsible for this, but who needs to be involved in this as well as recruitment, which again, I'll come on to as we go through the presentation. But you can see that traction and talent pipeline, some of the many things that we're involved in MBDA. You can see career fairs, and that's schools, colleges, universities. We do an awful lot about employability sessions. How do you bring yourself to life? How do you bring your applications to life? What are the employers looking for, etc. We do a number of student presentations, including assemblies. We can't do any of that, quite frankly, just in recruitment. We have to reach out to our apprentices and grad population, but also we put an awful lot of effort into our existing employees, irrespective of age. We're trying to get many people involved and interested. There's clearly an appetite in our business that people of all ages and all levels within the business want to engage with young people, which is brilliant. We've just got to find the best ways of allowing that to happen. Again, we've done a fair bit of work more recently. Again, I'll come on to that as to how we've done that as well. And of course, outreach continues to grow despite the challenges we have in recruitment, and that's sitting under us solely. That outreach continues to be a key part of what we do. And again, I've listed as many as we can. There's a couple of actually we're talking about doing for next year, which I haven't listed. But so far, we do Young Enterprise, which is very business specific. We have something called Robot Rumble, which has now become, it's in our 14th year of that, and it's become quite an iconic brand, if you like, within MBDA's outreach programs. We have Aircraft Reconnaissance Challenge, which is in support of the RAF and the RAF 100 celebrations from last year. Engineer for a Day, which is primarily aimed at Year 8 girls. And as we said before, we've moved towards Primary Engineer, which is that support to primary school children as well. I think Lydia mentioned that they also do that at Network Rail. If you were an engineer, what would you do as well? And many others. You see Glider Challenge, we do Flying Start, we have a Bolton Robotics in the Northwest, and we have a very strong STEM network that we continue to rely on and reach out to. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges that I mentioned early on, this probably doesn't come as a great surprise to you all. We do have many misconceptions, and those misconceptions is an ongoing challenge, not only for us, but also for our local schools that we partner with as well. And some of those perceptions around apprenticeships, you can see apprenticeships still remains this myth, if you like, that apprenticeships are only there for those that are left behind academically, which clearly is far from the truth. Most of the apprenticeship roles that we advertise and we recruit year on year, the academic requirements for those are on par with what you'd expect to either go into A levels or beyond A levels into university. So that's frustrating, but we are doing an awful lot of work around that. Engineering misconceptions, again, for those on the call, probably doesn't come as a great shock to you guys, but engineering misconceptions is really quite key. We still have this understanding, I guess, through parents, through students, for teachers, for careers advisors, and clearly it's not intentional, but people believe that engineers still that hard hat, dirty boots mentality. Nothing can be further from the truth from MBDA. 99% of our engineers are smart in suits, if you like, or very, they turn up and they in very smart casual, but this is casual attire. But it's a very clean environment, you can imagine. But trying to make sure that students and schools in particular understand that is something that can be very challenging. And also open to just to young people. We're doing a piece of work now, which is more around trying to get those STEM returners back into our business. So those that have either gone on to, have had children that are considering coming back into engineering, people that have been into engineering, that have moved away from that area. We're just trying to be a little bit more open to people maybe a little bit older than the standard typical students, that anything up to 22, 23. We're trying to engage with people that could be in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s, to try and open up the opportunities to try and retrain those guys and get back into our business. We are a defence company. There's a lot of people that apply a lot of ethics around not wanting to work in defence. That has an impact. That has a challenge in itself, as you can appreciate. That we are who we are. We do what we do, but we have to understand that people don't want to be in defence, and we have to accept that. So not only do we have challenges around people going into STEM into engineering, but also then from engineering into a defence environment that does pose an additional challenge. And of course, those the university versus apprenticeships. Again, I believe it's improving. Degree apprenticeships is an ever-increasing population in MBDA, which is brilliant, and they evolve from year on year. And I expect that in the next 3 years to probably increase in our world, probably by about another 100%, I would suggest, in terms of degree apprenticeships that we can offer. But of course, it's trying to get that message out to parents and students, careers advisors, teachers, etc. But there's an alternative to university. Degree apprenticeships may offer that, but also H&C, H&D routes for us does give students an alternative option as well, of course. And I think that lack of understanding, that conscious, unconscious understanding, if you like, we have to appeal to influencers, including parents and guardians. We can't just rely on trying to get the students. That continues, of course, that it grows and evolves in our recruitment teams. But it's important we do reach out to those parents and guardians, as well as the teachers and advisors as well, as we touched on. It's key. It's important that we keep up the momentum. And I think, you know what, on a positive level, I think we're getting there. There's fewer times when we go out to or meet with parents, a light bulb moment of degree apprenticeships. So my child potentially is going to get a degree education, is going to learn in the business and get paid a salary. They're becoming fewer and fewer of those shock moments. So university, you get paid and you learn, absolutely. Thankfully, we are making some very positive impacts on changing those perceptions. I'm sure as a collective of all the people on this court doing just that as well. Next slide, please. So the evolution, I guess, where we are, what we're trying to do. So again, talking about a big campaign and a big part of it to engage with those influencers. Again, parents, carers, business advisors, teachers, etc. We have a very much increased visibility, I guess, a lot of colleges and universities, and that could be classroom-based presentations, could be cohort presentations. We do an awful lot of ongoing career fairs. We're trying to increase our campus activities, so direct campus activity. We can't do that unless we have many of our graduates that support us doing those events. And we're trying to look at creation of campus teams as well, so that maybe campus champions. That's an ongoing project. We're trying to play those champions that are currently within those universities.
Hi, Andy. Sorry to interrupt. Your sound is just going a bit off, and I'm just concerned that people can't hear what you're actually saying.
No problem. Is that better?
Let me just ask anybody who's listening if they're having trouble too, so I can see if it's not just my laptop that's having problems. Okay, it seems some people are struggling with it.
Okay. Shall I continue?
Sorry?
Shall I continue?
It's really, the sound isn't clear at all, Andy, for some reason.
Shall I continue?
Would it be possible if I...
Now?
Yeah, do you want to continue? I can hear people are saying that it's getting a bit better there. So yeah, just please continue.
Okay, fantastic. So diversity, is pretty key to us. We are seeing an increased number of females. So I'm pleased to report. So at the moment, we are working to 25% of our apprentices are females. 20% of those our graduates are females. And for some undergraduates, it's running about 30 to 35%, which is very encouraging. If I compare that to the last 4 years, your apprentices were probably down as low as 15%, graduates probably 15%, and some is probably around about 20%. So we are making some positive impact on reaching out to females, which is fantastic. But we also need to manage our expectations and reality across our team leadership for them to understand what it looks like, what's reality. So how many females are taking up STEM subjects? How many females are taking A levels and subsequently going into further education, into universities, etc. We have to also understand.
Hi, Andy. I'm sorry, I'm going to interject again. I'm sorry, it's not clear at all. Would it be possible to move on to the next speaker and then potentially, I think if you log back in again, maybe it'd be clearer.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Yep. And then we can ask the question. You can finish off the rest of the slide as well.
Yeah, no problem at all.
It's not clear and it's not fair, and you to be saying all that stuff when we can't hear it.
No problem at all. I'll try again.
Right, thank you. So shall we continue on to Mags from Lloyds Banking Group now, if we can? Mags, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Fantastic, and your sound is absolutely fine. So shall we? Do you want to start with your presentation now? Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Mags Teal and I work for Lloyds Banking Group. My role at the moment in Lloyds is the Adoptions and Academy Lead, and that's in the Digital and Intelligent Products Lab. My talk's a little bit different in terms of we recently joined about 18 months ago with WISE, so we're on the journey of starting to do the sessions such as My Skills, My Life, and within my area, we've sort of been pulling together a tribe of people, more kind of a bottom-up approach of passionate people who want to go out and make a difference to children and get more people sort of engaged and interested in STEM. So who am I and why do I care about STEM? So basically, predominantly, I'm a mum of 3. I've got 2 daughters, which you can see on the pictures there. My 17-year-old loves computer science and maths, and my middle child, Hattie, she loves creativity and drama, so they're quite different. However, she recently started coding in Python and actually likes it, so that's great and a good start. And my son Toby, he loves rugby, computers and YouTube videos, which I think's a pretty common sort of thing that boys love in this day and age. In terms of my career path, I've always worked in sort of analytics and data related roles. Love data, and when I was at uni I studied applied sciences with systems modelling, and I loved being able to code and on all those kind of things. What I do alongside my day job as Adoptions and Academy Lead is I also manage the strategic partnership with WISE, and I'm using that to help embed the group strategy around gender diversity. So how did I find out about WISE? It was a very personal experience. Back in 2017, I went along to our local high school, who works really a lot with WISE. I went to a People Like Me session with my eldest daughter, Jess. Absolutely loved the what type of person am I questionnaire. And loved the fact that there were loads of different role models there, people from Network Rail, people who were building websites and people who were building games. So I thought that was fantastic for Jess, but I did see that there was a big gap. There was no financial institutions there, which I felt was a shame because there's so many different roles. Could you move to the next slide, please? So within Lloyds Banking Group, I basically asked, when I moved into the applied sciences area, I found out who the right person was to go to and talk to, and I told them from a personal point of view what I'd found out about WISE and how it had made a difference to my own daughter, and got her thinking about different things. As we sort of said, within Lloyds, there's a host of different STEM related roles, some of them technical, some of them non-technical. So on the technical side, you have your data analysts who are going into big data warehouses and finding out what the different trends are, and what the right policies are to put in place for, say, lending limits and things like that. We have engineering, we also have data scientists, data engineers, and then within my intelligent automation area, we have robotic process automation, chatbots, your natural language processing, so like your speech to text, turning your phone calls into actual data you can use. And on the other side, the less technical roles, but still in a digital workplace, are your Scrum Masters and your product owners. There's an absolute reams and reams of really exciting careers within banking that all relate back to the different STEM subjects. You'll see at the bottom there's a photograph of us when we got our first certificate to say we'd joined WISE. And these are some of my team, which came off the back of an inclusion and diversity stream in the people plan. And what we've done is pull ourselves together and do different things on like a rota volunteer basis. So we're up to about 35 colleagues now that we have as a useful persons list, and most recently 15 of us were trained by WISE in how to actually run our own My Skills, My Life sessions. If you could move to the next slide, please. So this is the roadmap of the various bits and pieces we've done since around October 2018 to now. And it includes lots of different pieces, including like the work we've done with WISE, and also we were working with other areas such as women in data and things like that. A couple that I want to point out in terms of showing the passion of the people and how we're kind of just doing this as a group together ourselves. Back in January 2019, one of our data scientists, Tola, she's a role model on the website. Herself and I went along to her university that she actually went to, so St Mary's University in London. And by talking to her professors from when she was there, she went to a series of 4 or 5 talks that day, which was at the end of each of the normal lessons for the first, second and fourth years. She gave them a talk around how she was using the actual things she'd learned in maths, such as vectors and different things, and how she was using that in her day-to-day career and how much she was loving it. Another thing we did sort of middle of 2019 was we went and did our Data Make a Difference at Allerton High School. So like a number of your companies, we have volunteer days, and a group of 6 of us decided that we would go to my local high school and talk to the children in year 8 and 9, which were from the maths and the physics classes, around what our roles were. And those 6 people ranged from a data engineer, people who built bots for the robotic process automation, a Scrum Master, and things like that, so that they could actually talk to the children around what it was like in a day in Lloyds building a robot or doing your data engineer, how Python was used. And we played a couple of games with them, predominantly around a bot that went into a film site and came back with interesting information. So we interact with the kids by making it a guessing game. So that was fantastic. We all really loved it, but we also sort of admitted we found it the most challenging thing we'd ever done, because obviously we work day to day with lots of different adults, but it's actually a very different dynamic with the children. So we took a lot of key learnings from that for what we'd do next time, and things in that included being very on your feet, because if the internet went down, you'd have to change the game you were playing or how you were playing it, down to quite small things that make a real big difference, like giving the goodie bags out at the end of the session, so the children don't get distracted. And then the other things that we've sort of done recently, which I'll show you in the next slides, is we've built an internal house site to start to get more people around the group involved and to make the management of future sessions easier. If you could move to the next slide, please. So this is the internal Hive site that we've created for WISE. And on there we have a number of different pieces of information, starting at the top by showcasing who our different role models are, so people know who's available. And then also in our sort of Hive profiles right at the top, before we talk about all our different work experience, we've also started to write in that we're a WISE campaign role model and say which of the three sort of different types we're ticking, so that people have that information easily available if they're setting up sessions. We also advertise on here all the different upcoming events off the WISE website, and also as we start to be able to run our own sessions now that we've had the training, we will use this site to advertise those. If you could move to the next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of what help do we need, as I said, we're just really starting the journey for My Skills, My Life sessions. So what we really could do with help with is linking in with schools to set up sessions. So if anyone on the call can help us with that, that would be absolutely fantastic. We're going to start initially running sessions around the sort of Leeds, Halifax, West Yorkshire area, London and Bristol. And the reason we're doing that is because the group of people we've pulled together from like intelligence automation and group analytics, they're our hub sites of where we work. But as we grow our role models, we can then go out to other areas of the UK as well. We're also happy to travel, so we're very fortunate in terms of the bank really does want to help Britain prosper and is really passionate about going into schools and doing the things we want to do on a volunteer basis. So we are actually open to travelling as well if there's opportunities for us to come along and support other people's sessions. And that's everything from me, Shagufta.
Brilliant, thank you very much. That's really useful. Andy, we'll come back to you after we've had questions from Mags. I'll just see what's come through. One of the questions I've had, which is interesting because we use a lot of jargon when we're talking, and this kind of hones the point that, you know, people don't know about the job roles that are out there. So one question is, what is a Scrum Master?
Yeah, so a Scrum Master is one of the roles that have come into play recently now that we follow the Agile framework. And Scrum does come from the vocab used in rugby. So what a Scrum Master predominantly does is it helps to manage a team that are working on, say, a software development or some sort of project development. And what that Scrum Master will do is make sure that every day they'll run a daily stand-up where people say, what were the things they did yesterday, what are they doing today, what blockers do they have? and help them remove any blockers so that they're able to do their work. We also use a tool called Jira, which is a software that basically it manages all your different tasks. So you'll put in different tickets according to the tasks you need to do to build a piece of software or manage a project. And you have to really clearly label them so people know. So for example, one of my tickets is, as the academy and adoptions lead, I need to be able to train people up in X, which would be a software. And then within that, you would then size how big that task is. And then Jira then helps you prioritize your work. So the Scrum Master helps you with all of this. And then you work in 2 weeks life cycle. So you'd prioritize work for a 2-week period. Then they'd run a refinement session to make sure all the right tickets are in there. And then at the end of that 2 weeks, they would then do like a review to say, has everything gone according to plan? So at a very high level, that's the kind of role that a Scrum Master performs.
One of the things you mentioned was that you had to convince one of the decision makers to get involved with WISE and get involved with outreach. How did you go about doing that, and how is it possible to find the right person? Who would you kind of suggest?
So within my area, the right person to ask was the director, and how I did that was through getting to know his EA, his executive assistant. So I basically found out who the person was who made the decision and had the money, and then I found out the best way of getting in touch with them and who was a key influencer, which was his EA. But then when I actually just sat down with his EA, it was actually a really easy conversation, because we were struggling at that time to find a lot of data scientists and the right people with the right skills to come in. And so they were really passionate about trying different things and building skill sets. So they were on board. It was quite an easy conversation actually once I found the right person to ask.
Could you elaborate on the Hive site? So I've got some questions in about, is it something that other companies could develop, or is there any other information you could give on that?
Yeah, so it's called Hive within Lloyds Banking Group, but what I can do is find out what the piece of software actually is that we use and send it back to Shagufta. But anything you have in your business that is like an internal comms piece, you can use that to set up an area of that to say, right, this is the thing that we're doing, so that this is WISE, this is what we're doing with them, and here are all the key events. If we didn't have Hive, we also still have SharePoint. Some of you may have a SharePoint site, or like you may have sections within your websites. It's wherever you have an area of your business that you can do key communications, you can add your WISE information on there, and then we advertise the site through the weekly newsletters and things like that, the different blogs. So if you this point in time you don't have something like that in place, and while you're working towards it, we have had a lot of success as well through the blogs and the way just feed into your normal communication people to get it included in there.
That explains that really well. We could, with regards to your question about contacting schools, we have some more information on that which we'll pass on to you. So we have some links within the Bristol area and in the Leeds area, which we'll pass on to you as well. I think that's all we've got for you, Mags, at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you.
You sending in general outreach questions, they can do. I'll try and so thank you very much, Mags. And if you just stay on the line, and we'll see if there's any more questions coming in for you as well. I'll try and go back to Andy now and see if we can get him back on and finish the presentation that Andy had. Hi, Andy, can you hear me? Hello, Andy.
Hi, is that better?
That's a lot better, thank you. Yeah, let's shall we try and start from where you left off?
Yeah. Which slide did people sort of start putting messages through? They couldn't hear me. Just I'm conscious I don't want to repeat myself, I guess, too much for the purposes of the guys on the call.
Yeah. So, Catherine, should we start from slide 48?
Okay. Right. So, so evolution of recruitment strategy. So, as I mentioned before, we are putting an awful lot of effort into the engagement for the influencers. We talked briefly about having to reach out to parents and carers, but also careers advisors and teachers. We've become a lot more conscious, I think, that engaging with students is clearly very important to us. Of course, that will never change, but we do have to put an awful lot more effort into talking to people that may have an influence on that student's career choices. We have increased our college and university activity and engagement. We've done a lot more classroom-based activities. There's a lot more day-to-day and regular cohort presentations we're involved in. Again, we can't do this without the support of graduates and undergraduates in our business. And that includes the apprentices that go out to schools on our behalf as well. We have significantly increased our campus activity. We are trying to create campus champions, for want of a better term, where those people that are doing undergraduate degrees, they are becoming the champions of MBDA and essentially demonstrating MBDA as the potential employer of choice. So trying to bring that culture to life a little bit more than we can do directly through sitting based in Hertfordshire now in our main office in the UK, of course. Diversity. Again, for those that didn't hear, our current levels are about 25% of our apprentices are females, 20% of those graduates are females, and about 30 to 35% for the summers and undergraduates. If we compare that to 2 or 3 years ago, there are significant increases. So to give an example, 2 years ago, we probably would have been running about 15% for apprentices and about 15% for grads. So there is a significant, a positive outcome of lots of work we've been doing to try and reach out to females that work, that study in and around our 3 main sites in the UK: Northwest, Southwest, and the Southeast, of course. But also, we are very conscious. We have a senior leadership that has certain expectations of us. So it's really important that they understand the reality of how many females are taking STEM subjects, how many females are going on to A-levels and into universities as well. So we're also very conscious of making sure they're aware what the reality is compared to what their expectations are on us as a recruitment function as well. Next slide, please. And again, I won't touch on this too much, but these are some of the key areas of where we've focused an awful lot around strategy. The one bit that I would bring your attention to in particular is we've introduced 5 paid voluntary days that allows our employees of all ages to go out and support STEM activities across schools and colleges and universities. That's significant for us. That wasn't in place this time last year, and we are seeing a significant uptake, an appetite, actually, an increased appetite across our employees as well. Next slide, please. And again, won't touch on this too much, but we're trying to increase our diversity, not just gender as well, of course, which is important to those on the call, but also just generally diversity as well. So we've introduced a strengths-based recruitment strategy for this year. That has seen a significant increase in those that in females in particular, and also those that socioeconomic and BAME as well. So that has worked extremely well for us. Again, if anyone wants to understand a little bit about our strategy around strengths-based and what that looks like, what we've done, then please feel free to reach out to me anytime. Next slide, please. And thanks for your questions. Yeah, so if you have any questions, I'm sure that will be passed on to me very shortly. And thanks for listening.
Thanks very much, Andy. I'm really sorry about the interruption in the middle of your presentation there before.
Not a problem. No problem.
So some of the questions that I've had through is, so what activities do you use at careers fairs and what resources do you give out?
So it's an interesting one about the resources we give out. We've had mixed messages. So we typically used to give out lots of freebies. So lots of information about our apprenticeship and graduate schemes in the form of a brochure, some supporting documentation that goes with that. But we give out lots of freebies. So very much corporate led or branded led, all manner of things. So it could be for some things such as pencils, pens, notebooks, stress balls. You can, all the standard stuff. But one of the things that we've been very conscious of, we're trying to be a little bit aware of the environment. Okay, so from next year, we are not going to be giving out freebies. We don't think that has a great impact. We're not really seeing a lot of feedback from candidates actually when they get something branded from MBDA has any great impact on people making choices, positive choices towards MBDA. It's more about that direct verbal and written communication is really key. So we'll continue with brochures, but we're going to probably just take a backward step with giving out branded freebies, quite frankly.
One of the questions is, within strength-based interviews, do you have any coding and technical interviews? That's from someone who does something similar, so is interested in what you do.
Yeah, we do. It's interesting. When we moved to strengths-based interview, and again, I'm happy to share this in greater detail, but when we did go to strengths-based interviewing, there was expectation from lots of the hiring managers that technical capability was very key. We felt that there was too much emphasis on the technical capability. It's still important, but we want to get a balance between the technical ability and the competence and the potential, but also we want to understand an awful lot about the person, their strengths, their personality, their cultural fit to MBDA, which is why we moved to strengths-based. So technical capability, we do have some tests and online tools that allow us to capture some of that, and also within our assessment days, we capture some of that as well. But I would say it's probably 50% split between technical capability and that strengths and personal fit to MBDA as a business.
Fantastic, thank you. I'll now kind of ask some general questions to all the panelists, if that's okay. So if please feel free to just jump in when you if you've got an answer to any of these. So I have a question. Some of the companies that we've got on the line, the large corporations, and they have budgets to kind of execute some of these outreach activities. What advice would you give to smaller organisations who didn't have those kinds of budgets to play with in terms of outreach?
Hi, it's Lydia.
Hi, Lydia.
I think my advice would be around the way that you communicate your resources. So you can create really good free resources that are downloadable. And that transaction, I guess, online where somebody feels like they've downloaded something. So in these times with COVID-19, I think this is going to be really useful. Really helps with the momentum and recognition of what you're providing to them, because they feel like they get something tangible. So STEM learning have really good free downloadable resources. I know you guys are compiling a load of the free downloadable stuff. The workshops, once you've done the online training, they're a really good way of hitting a large number of people or audiences. And also that collaboration piece, actually, see who else is doing this in your industry and go and work with them, because you might find companies like us are running events and we're providing the funding and the hosting, and we're actually very happy for other role models from other companies to come along and support. We always need volunteers. So we're doing that across the industry, but we want to do that with other industries too. So I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well. I think from us, don't underestimate how one person can make an impact into a school, for example. So for us, there's lots of schools we engage with that are crying out for one engineer to go in to support a classroom, for example, and how to bring to life a subject. So, for example, physics. You know, how does that engineer bring that to life in his or her world, right? So please don't underestimate that one person can make a big difference into one classroom.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you. A question that's quite topical at the moment as well. So responses from you would be great on this. So during this current climate, what are your plans to ensure that the momentum continues for outreach within your organisations, and how do you aim to maintain contact with schools and young people?
Yes, it's a challenging one, and Lydia might have a better answer than me, I have to say, but this is evolving. We had plans even to go into lots of schools events for next week, and we've had to cancel those. But I think for me, if there's an appetite for schools to continue to engage and students to continue to reach out, especially the larger organisations. I'm working from home today, but that doesn't stop us from engaging or making an impact. And if schools have an appetite for us to reach out to their students in various ways, both virtually or maybe not face to face in the short term, but certainly virtually, we've got the resources and more importantly, the appetite for that to happen. So I don't know if Lydia feels the same way from her perspective.
I do. We have worked like anything in the last week to find virtual routes for everything that we deliver face to face. So that was the kind of target I gave to my team, and they've been very successful in doing that. So all of those interactions, obviously we can't replace the Big Bang. That's going to be a massive loss for us this year in terms of 80,000 people over 4 days. And actually we were intending to support the Big Bang near Mees this year. But the competitions that we support at the Big Bang, they're still going to go ahead, and they're going to go ahead virtually. The Primary Engineer Leaders Award for us, that means for some of those interviews, they stream to about 2,000 to 2,500 children who are watching that interview and that conversation. So they are having an interaction with that individual, and there are questions and conversations and dialogues happening. So we're looking to open up more of those opportunities. One of the things I think is really important in maintaining the momentum isn't solely the interactions, it's my business knowing that we're maintaining the momentum. So right now, as you can imagine, everybody is very consumed with maintaining an operational railway. So in the background, we are preparing our plan to look beautiful and be easily communicated to my leaders upwards, so they know exactly what we're doing in early engagement, and that just will gently continue, and it's not something they need to think about. And then equally to the outside world, we're making it really clear and easy for people to be able to participate. So the downside is obviously that not all children are going to have virtual and remote access. So I think it's going to be really sad in terms of social mobility and possibly potential diversity from that perspective, because there isn't a way we can reach them short of posting stuff out. We're not that far down the line yet, but maybe we'll get there, and we'll see if we can do some physical packs that we could put into the post, because there are a lot of children who won't get that online representation and access. But that's what we're doing. We're throwing ourselves into the virtual world and creating. I think there is nothing we can't do in this space. So that's the challenge for my lot. TikTok, that's what we're going to try. We've never used it before. We're going to get into TikTok. I think that's what we all need to do. So we'll see. That's where the kids are sitting.
That's it. Max, is there something that you wanted to add there?
The only thing that I'd add is we also have a number of parents working for us in our various organisations, and they can be great role models in terms of influencing their children, who will then have conversations with their friends, be it however they're going to do that in these challenging times, but a number of them will be on WhatsApp groups for one another and things like that. So there's some things we could do at a more local level with asking parents to help champion things, making sure that the working parents who have their children at home take the opportunity to make sure they still do focus on their STEM. They understand the different roles and things. I think there's some more local things we could do to keep the children sort of engaged and thinking.
There is a hashtag as well on Twitter, which is EDU Twitter, which apparently if you put anything on there, your STEM professionals will see it and share it more widely. So that's another good way of getting stuff out there.
Oh, we'll definitely share that with everyone that's listening as well. If you can just, we'll have a look at that one. Finally, what would your response be to anyone in your organisation who challenges outreach, and what would your top tip be for anyone thinking about starting a programme within their organisation?
So my top tip.
Sorry, go on.
No, well, my top tips is, if you're passionate and you care about it, then just start. Find a school or ask around. I know obviously we're in worrying times at the moment, but in a more sort of equilibrium state, then if you want to do it, then just do it. Find your tribe, find people who can help you, and don't be scared of like contacting schools directly yourself, telling them what you do and why you'd like to engage with the children and help them understand. Because from my experience prior to all of this, I was a governor at primary school, and like you were saying earlier on the call, they are crying out for people to go in and talk to the children about the different careers. So I'd just say, if you want to do it, then just do it.
You're normally knocking on an open door, aren't you? It's absolutely incredible. But yeah, my top tip would be data and evidence. So that impact of your events and being able to formulate it and show the business what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it really succinctly. And the final tip for me would be building the bridges between the activities. So in isolation, obviously, these activities might not bring people to you in the long run. So we're looking at building the bridge between the 14 to 16 to 18-year-old activities to bring people through to apprenticeships and careers talks when we get further down the line, and encouraging more kind of networking with the university to bring those students to us when they're ready to apply. So that would be my advice.
My really brief one would be talk to your senior leadership. I appreciate resources are grander or greater than big companies, but talk to your senior leadership. Bring to life what the benefits of reaching out to young people is, and what they can be. But also, senior leadership will have to think a little bit selfishly, don't they? You know, what can that bring us in terms of that CSR piece? But if it means that we have to then fall into that piece, that selfish piece, and let's do it. I think you'll be surprised. Lots of senior leadership have a real appetite to support some of these innovations and campaigns. So talk to them and see. I think you'll be surprised. Lots of them are a lot more positive than you'll probably give them credit for.
And my top tip from Wise would be, we're completely open at Wise at the moment. We're all working from home, and it's business as usual as much as it can be at Wise. So if you've got any advice that you need or anything like that, we can certainly get in touch with us and we can point you in the right direction with regards to that. And definitely use My Skills, My Life, our online resource. We are thinking about doing a webinar, an online webinar for mothers and daughters in the near future. So that might be something that might be of interest, and it'd be great to have some fantastic role models on video link to all the homes around the UK. So that's something that we're looking forward to. So thank you. That brings us to the end of our webinar, and I'd like to say a massive thank you to the speakers for joining us today and really giving us fantastic insight to their outreach programmes. And thank you to everyone else